lives.
Thank you very much to ADSG for the opportunity to be a part of the stand and to provide the Abu Dhabi Urban Planning Council a platform as well to explain a little bit about the Istidama program. Maybe I can start by introducing myself. My name is Yasmina Rashidi. I am originally an urban planner that works with the Abu Dhabi Urban Planning Council and have now made a shift into working with the Istidama program for a number of reasons, because sustainability and urban development are extremely closely linked, and I think one can't really work without the other, and each of their success depends on one another. So the transition into looking at sustainability and various forms of sustainable development is an extremely important part of what the Council is doing. Vision 2030, which is set by the government and leadership of Abu Dhabi, really looks at where we're going in the future and how we're actually developing our emirate in order to achieve certain targets, certain growth, certain levels of sustainability. And by doing so, I mean, all of the stars align, where you look at growth and development as well as the economy of the country, balancing it off against social sustainability. So 2030 vision is not just a vision, it essentially becomes the backbone of understanding how and where we're actually going to move forward and move to the future. In April 2010, the Government of Abu Dhabi Executive Council mandated the all-new developments to achieve a sustainability rating, which is the Istidama Pearl rating system. So this mandate was targeting for all new communities to achieve a 1 Pearl rating, and all new buildings and villas to also achieve a minimum of a 1 Pearl requirement rating, and for all government buildings and villas to achieve 2 Pearl rating. Recently, the UPC and the Istidama program was very fortunate to receive an award from the World Green Building Council. The award specifically was looking at regional leadership, and I think this in itself gives tribute to the Abu Dhabi government and to their vision and the direction of where the Istidama program is going. Being able to receive an award and recognition from an entity like the World Green Building Council is, for us, a big achievement, and we look to continue to increasing our efforts into the development of a sustainable future. So a little bit more about the Istidama Pearl rating system and the program itself. It's based on 4 pillars looking at environment, economic, and social. But what makes this program stand apart from all others is that it has a 4th pillar, which is a cultural pillar. And it attempts to begin to look at the Abu Dhabi Arab and Islamic culture and being able to channel what are sustainable principles that are already embedded in the culture and the society through the rating system, therefore encouraging growth and development that does occur to happen with culture in mind and with the origins in mind of sustainability. Like I said, it's based on a Pearl rating system. So the number of pearls are essentially allude to the number of credit points that development is achieving when they're actually putting forward applications. So similar to LEED and BREEAM have their rating systems, and LEED, for example, gold, silver, platinum, etc. The Istidama program works on a pearl basis. So you have your base required pearls, which is a 1 pearl, which all developments need to achieve. And then you have a 2 pearls, which gets you up to 60 points, 4 pearls 85, so on and so forth. Now the Pearl rating system is broken down into several different rating categories. You have the Pearl community rating systems, which looks at overall stances of master plans, for example, looking at how well interconnected they are, how do the buildings sit and perform within these communities, how connected people are to community facilities, how easy is it for people to get around, what is the conditions that they're living in, the air quality, how safe these places are, etc. The Pearl building rating system obviously looks and focuses on buildings themselves that are being built within the city or communities, and looks at the health of these buildings and how well they're actually performing in terms of efficiency, water, energy, etc. And of course then there's the Pearl Villa rating system, which sets itself apart from buildings themselves to actually really hone down to living spaces for Emiratis themselves, and trying to actually see how well these buildings are performing and how well they're designed in order to meet the needs of the people, but also be sustainable. Now, Istidama is based on a series of themes, and the 7 themes are listed here, and I'll go through them in a little bit more detail. The first is the integrated development process. If you see the breakdown of the different categories that we look at and rate within Istidama, it gives you a sense of the importance that the program puts on these different categories. And I'll take you through each one and I'll explain a little bit more detail. So for the integrated development process, it's really looking at how we do our business. How do we develop? How do projects actually become established within the Emirate of Abu Dhabi? And how do they work together in order to achieve that? On a typical project, you would have this conventional way of working. You do your bit, I'll do my bit, and when we're both done, we'll meet and see how we can make it work. Whereas the integrated development process challenges how people work together and actually gets them to come together and work through an integrated process throughout the life cycle of the project. So everything from inception, when you're looking at the original idea of the project, through design, and then into construction, commissioning, testing, operation and maintenance, and then ongoing throughout the life of the project, seeing how well it's actually operating and how the team are initially working together in order to report back on how well the project is doing. So it essentially establishes a collaborative teamwork and an iterative design process, which encourages construction activities, for example, that value workers' welfare and the quality of the environment, for example, and management, and so on and so forth. And that takes that then through to operation and maintenance. We also look at natural systems, where obviously as part of the development, before anything actually takes place in the development, you actually look at where is this development site, where are these buildings actually going to be built, these communities, and assessing the land, ensuring that there are no natural assets that are going to be disturbed or managed inappropriately in the process of development. Obviously, the priority of how that happens, obviously looking at protecting, enhancing, and then restoring any of the natural systems that may be on site. So within the natural systems analysis that is completed, it looks at the different assets across land and water, for example, and it concerns existing natural systems through the protection and mitigation. It would look at also developing natural system design and management strategies, for example, as well as enhancing ecological value for the project. Livable spaces looks at several categories. Looks at livable buildings, for example, outdoors. So how do people move through spaces? How do they experience their communities? A big part of sustainable living is actually having not just sustainable living indoors, but actually also being able to experience your community, your city in a sustainable way. Providing shadeways, for example, for primary walkways through communities. Promoting more thermal comforts in outdoor spaces. So your main plazas, for example, would be cool, would be shaded, will have the right amenities in order for people to be able to stop and enjoy these spaces. Encouraging the use of active urban environments, getting people to actually get out of their cars and walk to their destinations. Providing accessible local amenities. Spatial planning is a really big part of being able to get people out of their cars and actually using spaces, because you suddenly encourage them to gain more immediate access to what would be a community facility or a local amenity or a destination, for example. And reducing things like urban pollution, being able to have the right lighting levels in your city so that in the evening times people can have the right kind of safety and security when walking in certain areas, but also having areas that are dimly lit and not necessarily over-exhausting powering, for example. Livable buildings indoors takes that life and looks at it on the inside and actually looks at how the buildings are performing, how well is the indoor air quality, improving ventilations and the quality during normal building operation times, improving the indoor thermal comfort. It's just as important as the outdoor thermal comfort, because you often find yourself moving from indoors to outdoors and realizing that the systems are being overworked unnecessarily because they don't have smart systems in place in order to be able to balance that cooling, for example. And creating visually comforting environments where people can be in buildings that are well designed, that they can actually enjoy and be healthier and perform better in as individuals. Moving on, we look at precious water, and that's obviously a really, really big credit for us, and one of the most important ones. Again, similar to the natural systems, there's a kind of tier system that we approach, that we take to water efficiency, reducing the demand, efficient distribution, and then alternative sources where water is not available. So obviously looking at the reduction of indoor and outdoor water demands by having smart systems in place, for example, the right kind of fixtures and fittings. The exteriors, looking at the kind of irrigation that we're using, the landscaping, making sure that it's the right type of landscaping to ensure the reduction of water, for example. And using alternative sources, so on-site treatment of grey water, etc. is also looked at and explored. When it comes to resourceful energy, it's obviously extremely important that we look at balancing out the capital cost and the time scale. Looking at how you move from concepts to designs and then construction of the project, and being able to find the most efficient use of resourceful energy. So everything from the building form and orientation to actually putting it into the plans to try and see where we can reduce as much as possible the loads on the buildings to be able to get the best efficiencies out of it once it's built. Allowing for passive designs to be taken into account, as well as then looking at the active components that will be working to help the building become more and more efficient. For water and resourceful energy, the combination of the two accounts for 50% of the importance of credits that we give to our rating system. And it really begins to focus where the design teams need to be looking at in order to gain more sustainable developments and more sustainable results on the body. Next, we have stewarding materials, which looks at being able to the use of prohibiting hazardous materials within developments, implementing comprehensive waste management, for example, in projects during construction and operation, promoting the use of recycled materials, promoting recycled industries, reducing the use of materials that may be of harm, for example, for like paints. That's something that we have been looking at, making sure that the right kind of paints are being used to improve on the health and the well-being of people within these buildings and structures. And the last is given to innovating practice, which looks at showcasing cultural and regional design strategies. And looking at how these teams are looking at innovative solutions during the design and construction stage of the project. Taking a little bit of a closer look at the Salama and the statistics over the duration of essentially the program's life, we have achieved a significant amount of Pearl rated buildings or projects since we've started. And we've just completed, well, it's just over 11 million meters squared GFA, which is quite significant. There's a series of projects that have been taken right through and are actually being constructed now, and are going through their construction auditing. And it's extremely rewarding for us to see a lot of these projects now coming to light. Looking a little bit at maybe breaking it down to building numbers, we've rated in total 645 buildings in total, and that is across the Abu Dhabi Emirate, looking at Abu Dhabi, Al and the Western region. And when it comes to villas, I mean, you can see the numbers. Villas is one of the biggest things on our list when it comes to looking at sustainable development and ensuring that the people that are going to be living in these homes actually understand the buildings that they're living in and understand how to actually operate. In total, we have over 501 developments that have been approved so far. We've also have an Estidama training program. A big part of, I think, the success of the Estidama program is actually being able to make people aware of what Estidama is, providing people with that knowledge and that know-how, and equipping them with the tools that they require in order to develop sustainable projects and developments within Abu Dhabi. Up until now, we have provided over 7,000 training sessions to date. That's massive. We are still surprised that the training sessions are still going since 2010. It's unbelievable the demand that we're getting. Noting that all of these are free, that could be a big part of it. But I think that was part of our strategies, wanting to open the doors up to everyone within the various industries, from either construction, building and development, to design, the industry that are suppliers, for example, students. We get a lot of students that are very interested in this program. I think it's a big part of being able to reach out and send the message out there of what's available and what are the things that they can learn and work with. I mean, the training hasn't been in vain. We have a series of pro-qualified professionals who have now come into the Abu Dhabi market and are actively working on submitting all of the developments that are obtaining their pro rating. So to date, we have over 1,200 pro-qualified professionals in the market that we are working very closely with. When you look at the breakdown of who's coming in and who's actually being trained, you can see kind of, we have a large percentage of people that are coming from the private sector, and then of course it's broken down with government and students and others. And within the private sector themselves, you can see the breakdown. We have about 37% consultants and 63% contractors. There's a huge interest from the industry. And I mean, that like I said, the numbers of training sessions, they don't seem to be decreasing, only increasing as we continue to move forward. In addition to the training that we have provided, we've also reached out to the industry, supply industry, to try and align our requirements with what's available within the market, and to ensure that there is a balance between what is expected now in the growth and development with what the supply chain is actually providing. In addition to that, it's also to try and dampen down the possible inflation that the market might have as a result of a program like Estidama, and to ensure that the prices that are available to people are fair, and that the source of the fixtures and fittings, for example, that are being brought in are of the right quality and standard that will be able to get rated. So we looked at various suppliers and actual products themselves, everything ranging from water fixtures and fittings, insulation, windows, air conditioning, and solar water heaters. In total, we looked at and listed 2,042 products that are available in the market. And they're actual Astidama checked and verified products for people to use within their projects. This was a project that is now completed and the database is prepared. But again, there's a huge interest, and since the project's been closed, we've still been getting a lot of interest from various suppliers to actually begin to list their products as well. It's been a really big year for Astidama, and we have big 7 typologies that we've been looking at. Everything ranging from airports to healthcare, hotels, retail, multi-residential, schools, and of course, one of our biggest numbers, villas. It just gives you a sense of the range of the types of projects that we've been working with Astidama, actually taking them through the rating system. Some of the key achievements that Astidama has been able to see over the last year have been a midfield terminal building as part of the Abu Dhabi airport, which is the largest singular building to ever be rated globally. It's a huge achievement internationally, but also for the government of Abu Dhabi to actually have one of their big and major buildings that has hundreds of thousands of millions of people moving through it on a yearly basis, to actually be moving through a very sustainable space. Abu Dhabi schools, we have 70 developments covering over 1.1 million meters squared. Abu Dhabi villas, we have 8,500 two-pearl villas within 10 rated communities. So again, it gives you a sense of the number of Emiratis that are going to begin to occupy these sustainable buildings and learn with direct experience how to actually live and operate these sustainable buildings. Resource efficiency targets that we've set for ourselves has been surpassed with energy and water and waste. Obviously, on a strategic government level, we have been asked to create some strategic targets and ensure that the growth and development within Abu Dhabi is able to achieve that, and we have now surpassed those targets. So again, it's a very big achievement for us to know. Looking at green buildings globally and trying to get a sense of what is the trend that we see. This is kind of a range of the international picture of what has been achieved in the last year, in 2012, and then what it's looking at in 2015. And looking at where UAE lies within that, the UAE alongside Singapore are right up there in the actual high percentages of taking on a green building trend. Now you ask yourself, why is the UAE so high when it's such a young country or government to be looking at green buildings and sustainable development? What sets the UAE and Singapore, aside from the rest, is the fact that we're the only 2 that have green buildings as a form of regulation that the developments must comply with. And that's why it's so high. But it also indicates the success of the government's policies and regulations in order to be able to achieve green buildings and green development. Similarly, looking at the levels of green building activity internationally, again, that indicates a 51% green building development that has occurred within the UAE. Again, extremely high levels, and this is sourced by the World Green Building Council report. What are the drivers and the triggers for green buildings? Looking at the percentages across, again, the various countries. UAE, its first reason is 55% is given to regulation, and the second reason is given to client demand. It's almost an equal split between the 2. So not only is it because it's mandated, but it's also a demand that's being pushed more and more now by the clients to have better buildings, healthier spaces, and kind of top-of-the-range type living. It really is on all levels being supported by the government, and that's trickling right all the way down to the industry. again, looking at the most important reasons, and if you break that down over energy reduction, water reduction, improved IAQ, protecting natural resources and lower greenhouse gas emissions, you're able to see where the UAE comes across the global scale. First and most important, 86% is being given to energy reduction. Second is 64% is being given to water reduction. And then the rest of the percentages are weighed out across the others. But I think one of the most important things to indicate here and to highlight is on the greenhouse gas emissions, there's a 5%, which looks like it's pretty low. But the way that we look at it is the energy and water nexus. The combination of those two essentially give us better results in lowering greenhouse gas emissions. So it kind of helps balance out that kind of smaller, that weaker percentage that you see on the bottom right. So I think to summarize, sustainable buildings are essentially structures that help us, how should I say? The shell of where we live in is only one part of how we live. And I think being able to have a shell which sufficiently protects you, but also promotes your health and well-being is extremely important. And that's how we see sustainable buildings. But without sustainable buildings, there won't be a sustainable community. Being able to be those individual parts that come together and create a sustainable place for people to live, for people to thrive and grow. It creates better spaces, improves the quality of life, as well as providing healthier people and a healthy community that can thrive within those spaces and places. And that's really, in summary, what the goal of the Estidamo program is. Happy to take any questions that anyone might have. Thank you very much.